true image of Churchill. And if you think I'm being unjust on Churchill, then consider the case of Coventry, the famous, legendary air raid on Coventry. When we think of legends, romantic notions like the Holocaust, what about the other legends like Coventry and Hiroshima? Coventry, of course, we all know what it means, the most barbarous air raid on Britain during the war. 300 people were killed there, I believe, altogether, slightly over 300 perhaps. Enormous industrial was damage to the aero engine. But the real story of Coventry is where Mr. Churchill was that day. You see, Churchill was told 2 days before that there was going to be a barbarous air raid on Coventry, a barbarous air raid on Britain. The Air Ministry sent him a message, which is in the Air Ministry files now, and they said, Prime Minister, we have just received intelligence from our code-breaking office that the Germans are going to carry out a vicious air raid in 3 consecutive nights with their entire air force, all 3 Luftflotten, all 3 air fleets. Over 1,000 bombers escorted by fighter planes are going to attack a target. We know the second priority is outer London, the third priority is the Thames estuary, the fourth priority is the home counties, so it stands to reason the top priority is the centre of London. They're going to attack it night after night for 3 nights. Code name Moonlight Sonata, Mondscheinse Renate, so it stands to reason that the first night is going to be the first full moon night. And Churchill says, when is this? And the Air Ministry says, well, the first full moon night's the night of November the 14th to the 15th. Well, one of the documents I've managed to obtain, I managed to rent for £5,000 the private desk diaries of Mr. Churchill. I rented them from the gentleman who stole them, who was his bodyguard, his Scotland Yard detective, Tommy Thompson. Commander Tommy Thompson's godson rented them to me. And here is the extract from the desk diary for the actual Coventry period. I mentioned, as I said, Mondscheinse Renate was going to be the first full moon night, November the 14th. I'll give it you bigger. Here we are. A blow-up of that. As you see, it was November. November the 14th was going to be the first full moon night, and the raid is going to last for 3 days. 3 days, beginning probably on the dusk of November the 14th to 15th. So Mr. Churchill draws a bracket of 3 days with no appointments in London, please. Because he has been told that the target, number 1, is London. And he says, when will we know when this doleful event is going to take place? And the Air Ministry says, the documents are there in the Air Ministry files. The Air Ministry says, well, Prime Minister, we will know for certain when the date of the raid is, because the Germans always send out on the morning of a raid a spotter plane to check the weather over the route. And we intercept his radio signal back to Berlin. So that will give us warning of the actual day of the raid. And we will know of the actual target of the raid when the Germans that afternoon switch on their blind bombing beams. And we will send up a radio plane, a radio intelligence plane, to see where the beams intersect. And that tells us what the actual target is. And Churchill says, very well then, keep me informed. And comes the morning of the raid, November the 14th. He goes about his business as usual. He's got a full programme that morning, November the 14th. He goes to Westminster Abbey at midday for the funeral of poor old Neville Chamberlain, who's died a few days previously of cancer. That's one reason why he wasn't able to continue in office, in fact. And then he comes back from Westminster Abbey. Churchill asks the latest state of play, and the Air Ministry tells him in a message, which is in the files, well, in the meantime, we have now intercepted the radio report of the weather plane. So tonight, Prime Minister, is the night. And on our information, we believe the target is still central London. Churchill looks at his appointment calendar, 2:45 Lord Halifax, 3 o'clock Mr. Attlee, no more appointments after that. He sees these two, I know that, the appointments are confirmed in their private papers. And round about 4 o'clock, when he's finished with Mr. Attlee, he goes trundling out of the back door of number 10, down the garden, to the wall at the end of the number 10 Downing Street, the garden, a big brick wall where there's a gate in it. And his car is parked behind the garden gate, the big black Humber limousine. He never drives off from the front when he's on this escape. He only drives off on the front when the press are there for big state official visits and state business. When he's escaping to his hidey hole in the country, the car's waiting round the back in Horse Guards Parade. I know this because his private secretary who's with him at this moment is a man called John Martin. Still alive, Sir John Martin has been foolish enough to give me complete access to his private diary, which confirms the whole event. Except that Sir John Martin himself doesn't realise what he's shown me, because he only has half the picture. He doesn't have the desk diary, he doesn't have the Air Ministry signals, which I'm quoting to you. At 4 o'clock, Churchill climbs into his big black Humber limousine to get out before the bombers come. As he's about to drive off, a dispatch rider arrives from the Air Ministry. Sir John Martin told me this. He said that the envelope was handed in through the window, and as we were driving off, Winston and I, past Hyde Park, we just got past Hyde Park, when Winston leans forward and raps on the glass. Driver, back to number 10 Downing Street. The message from the Air Ministry has said, Prime Minister, we have now received word from our radio intelligence plane that they have detected the German blind bombing beams intersecting not over London as we had thought, but over Coventry. So the target for tonight is Coventry, not London after all. Driver, back to number 10. He goes back to number 10 Downing Street, where all his staff are waiting for him, because he hasn't told his secretaries to take the afternoon off. He hasn't said to them, girls, wouldn't you like to go and have 3 days by the seaside or something, or go and visit your aunt up in Newcastle. He's let them all work on in the centre of London. He himself has betaken himself to the countryside. He comes back and they look at him, astonished, round-eyed with astonishment, and they say, Boss, you are back. And he says, this is what Sir John Martin tells me, I have just received the most doleful intelligence from the Air Ministry, and he waves the closed brown envelope in his hand, which he doesn't tell them what's in it, that tonight a most violent and barbarous enemy air raid is expected on London, our fine capital city, on London, and it would not be right for the citizens of this hard-pressed metropolis to gain the impression that I'm not willing to suffer the same trials and tribulations, to go through the same misfortune and sacrifice that I'm asking them to bear. I have therefore decided to come back and share their misfortune with them. And that night at 8 o'clock, according to Sir John Colville in his private diary, another of the secretaries, Churchill goes up onto the roof of number 10 Downing Street, bears his portly waistcoat, and says, I am ready for them to attack now. Let them now start bombing and do their damnedest. I will stand here and take it. Knowing full well that the target for that night is Coventry, 350 miles away. It's a rather sad story about Mr. Churchill, but as President Reagan might say, you ain't heard nothing yet.